now 6:30. Call this meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tom Sinkowitz.
Here.
Gary Stalboy.
Here.
Dee Gorman. Don Cavella.
Here.
Adrian Ferrari.
Here.
Ted Dumaine. Linda Fedor. Keith Shealy. Linda did reach out to me to let me know that she would not be able to attend tonight due to illness. No comment. We have not seen Keith Shealy at any meeting this calendar year, nor has he responded to any emails or communicated. All right, first order of business is the minutes from our previous meeting. Do we have any questions or comments about the minutes? Or corrections?
I will be accepted.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion to accept the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I'm going to abstain.
Motion carries. First item on our agenda for tonight is to review the audit report. Unfortunately, the auditor is not here yet, so we are going to move that item to the last position. We expect him to arrive somewhere around 7 o'clock. So at that point, we will move on to BOE agenda with their financial report. And I do have a couple of questions that could possibly be answered on the cost summary, under revenue summary, under SPED excess aid. There's $100,000 listed as additional revenue. Could you just give me insight on that?
Yes, that's it's $100,000 of special ed excess cost grant that was the funds that we didn't apply as credit to the operating budget. There was some of the funds left remaining out of the full amount that we expected to get, and we were going to record that as revenue.
The other question that I had is on the next page where it says by object, under the special education excess aid, there's a listing of $600,000 under tuition. I know that you mentioned it in your the previous page, but I wonder if you could speak a little more detail to that, please.
Again, that's the special ed excess cost grant.
Okay.
And what we do is when we build the budget, we build the outplaced tuitions.
Okay.
Comes to some $1 million and change. We apply, expect to receive that money as special ed excess cost, and apply it as a credit to reduce the amount of appropriation.
Okay. In the page before that, it shows, it says budget assumes excess cost credit of $600,000. How secure is that?
I can speak to that. Paul Brenton, Superintendent.
Thank you.
No worries. The state has announced that they're going to give us our excess cost numbers in January. Those are based on a variety of factors. One of them is percentage of free and reduced lunch, in addition to special ed spending, other places, student population. If you follow the Hartford Current and some of the news, they actually are expecting excess cost grant awards to be up this year. I always smile when the state tells us any award will be up this year, but we have no indication suggesting it will be below previous years. The indications are the opposite if we can trust the current news coming out of Hartford.
So there's a potential for it to be applied in January as opposed to March or June, which is stated on your report.
It'll all depend, well, no, so January is when we'll get the number.
Okay.
January is when they will tell us what we're expected to receive. It's about mid-January, I think, based on the last current article.
Okay. So they'll tell you what you're getting, but you won't get it until later.
Mr. Lucier, historically, when have we received it?
March, April timeframe.
I wouldn't expect them to cut early checks.
Does anybody else have any questions on this report?
I have a few. How do you normally pay up, contribute to the pension? So to get today, you only have $3,100. I was wondering, not sure how you normally would contribute
Is
to
that
that.
the, Mrs. Salomon, is that the pension or the accrued vacation payout?
Pension retirement.
We usually make the
This is on the general
$300,000
ledger,
payment.
general ledger.
Pardon me?
The general ledger?
Yeah, I don't have that with me.
Yeah.
What's the account?
230?
Okay.
Yeah, pension retirement, budget's $300K, and year-to-date is $3,191.27, and incumbents is $3,500.22.68.
I would have to look at where those actuals came from. They're probably from people who have retired and received a pension payout.
Okay,
But the 300,000 is what we budgeted out of that line, and there's 100,000 in the special education line for
yeah,
the
that
400,000.
yeah,
So I'd have to look at the actuals and the encumbrance, but
okay. All right.
We'll email that answer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And under pupil services, which is 323, it shows like a negative 14,748.49.
yes,
Budget
I want to
balance.
explain that in the cover sheet of the executive summary.
Okay.
If you turn back to the narrative,
The credit will not be applied until March or June.
Okay, that applies.
Correct.
All right. Okay, my mistake.
no, that's fine, that's fine. You don't know unless you ask.
I'm good.
Any other questions?
You all set?
Yep.
Don, do you have any questions?
No.
Adrian?
No, not at this moment.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion that we accept this report as presented.
I make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion to accept this report as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Now we'll go on to the financial report presented by the town. So I have a couple of questions on page 1. Under local revenues, just outstanding numbers on investment and interest and liens. I wonder if you could kind of speak to those points.
Well, the interest rates were, have been raised. The banks have raised them based based on the federal rate.
Mhm.
So interest rates have increased dramatically versus what we were even getting 1% before.
Mhm.
So that shows reflection there, higher interest rates for the banks.
Would you say that that's the major contributor or
Oh,
the
yeah.
only contributor?
100%, yes.
And it looks like on property tax, we're ahead of pace, it seems to like.
Yep. So property tax, yes, we are. We have 42% left to collect.
Now, under the iPark lot sales, I thought we had sold the last remaining lot.
iPark lot, none of those transactions happened this year. They happened prior year.
All right.
Yep.
So there is no remaining lots to be sold?
I think there's one.
There
And
is
that's
one.
why we have budgeted 25,000.
Okay.
I asked the chief for here today, so he gave me a written explanation on it, so I wanted to see where we stood with that. So looks like we're at 98,822.50. That's here today?
Yeah, as far as the one.
Yes. And we're budgeted at 95, so.
So the, as far as the outside duty, I'm not sure if everyone's aware, so we end up charging contract, it's 125 per hour. It's broken down as the chief put into the document, 75 goes to the officer, 15 to the pension fund, and 35 to the town. And then there's a percentage that goes to offset the social security tax. So as far as what we're on pace for, I mean, right now we're taking in quite a bit with all the contracts that are going out there. But as you can tell, it's bringing a lot back to the town.
I do a receivable account for that, and as of right now, we haven't collected revenue. We're still waiting for a ton of payments, just because our last 4 vehicles were so high.
Okay.
So we're still waiting to see a profit, which you will see a profit at the end of the year, but as of right now, we don't.
So you don't have
No,
that 98?
no.
It's been billed but not collected.
That's anticipation. I'm sure he's anticipating
Yeah.
it'll be 98.
All right, I might have misunderstood you right there, but yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because year to date, you have over 2,800 hours dedicated to that position.
That's in just 6 months.
oh, yeah, it's heavy right now. It's heavy.
All right. Any questions on page 2? I have one under the legal notices for selectmen. I'm assuming that's going to end up being a line item transfer at some point later this
Yeah.
year.
Yes. You'll have that tonight.
That's tonight.
That's tonight. Yep. We're increasing it another, I want to say 5,000.
There are no other questions on page 2. I do have one on page 3, under building and grounds service. We anticipating overrun on that probably this year.
On what line item?
Service,
Building supplies, service. Okay, yeah. So that is service of, yes. It might be, we don't know. So that encumbers like the generator services and the generator here at the town hall. It's service on, and it is tractors he might have, that type of stuff. As of now, yeah, $500 left. We could be okay with that, but maybe not.
How about on the highway refuse disposal? You only have 580 left of that.
Yep. Well.
That may be an issue down the road.
35, yeah, I'll look to see if there's any invoices that are misposted there, but that could be legit.
all right, any other questions for page 3? All right, now page 4.
Guessing there's an overage at the police there for the supplies?
Yes. Yeah, so that's based on what we had to do is in order to get a transfer from Lawrence, we paid our parking $35,000. We took it it out of the supplies. And the chief has requested a line item transfer to offset that from the police salaries. But the benefit of that was just, as far as he's effective here and now, he did about a 2-week training period and was on the road immediately, which is more cost effective than a 1.5 years in the academy.
Okay.
And where did you transfer from?
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. Doing
They heard about it.
work right now.
Is it?
Yeah.
On the relocation, Kelly,
Yep,
has
relocation.
anything been used out of that since?
Not
the
yet,
the
not
use
yet.
of gardens?
Not yet, but there was something after the meeting last month, the next day. So I haven't seen any reimbursement requested, but fingers crossed they don't. But some families had to be replayed, they had to find a new location, the fire. What was that fire? At
Yeah.
the apartment complex? Yeah.
They had no other vacant
Yeah.
properties within this gardens.
As of right now, we don't have any requests, but
Any other questions on page 4? On page 5, it looks like the animal controls utilize their whole,
yeah, like I explained at the last meeting, dog fund, you transfer the money from the general fund into the dog fund. Pay all expenditures out of the dog fund, not her salary, and that's how we control the dog fund.
Why is salary so high? Are they missing somebody? Like, are they short
So,
staffed?
she has herself and a part-time helper, is what she has. So, and also if someone fills in for her, it's expensive when we have people that fill in. So that anticipates the cost of the higher salary.
Got it.
Is that like a certified position?
Yes,
Is it?
yeah. Yep. You have to get so many hours, I want to say, a year for animal control.
And then certain training mandates that they have to reach as far as hours and maintain each year.
Do we know, so recreation's not here, are they gonna have enough there for their supplies and expenses? Because they ran through, what, 80%?
Yeah, I think they will, because right now, what they use some of their supply expenses for was for the Lions Park to help with the contribution to the equipment they purchased. So I don't think you're gonna see a big purchase out of there again. They'll probably just, make it work for the rest of the year. Yeah.
How about under general insurance?
Yep.
Does that look like it's going to remain good or?
Yeah,
Find it
so,
close.
yeah, general insurance right now, so, that, I have 3 payments in there, 3 quarter payments, so I only have 1 more left. So if I don't have any big claims coming in for the town, and I don't have to hit a deductible, we should be okay.
Okay.
But if I have to pay out 1,000, I want to say our deductible is 1,000 or 2,000. That always, adds up quickly, but I think we'll be good.
all right, do we have any questions on page 6?
Yeah, what's the outdoor restroom?
Outdoor restroom is part of Lions Park. So they had to do some engineering, some design of it, so that was the cost of it.
That's for the design?
Yeah.
Any updates on that sound system? I know that's been mentioned before.
No.
No.
I don't have anything on that
All
one,
right.
yeah, sorry. I don't think he's even really discussed that. Yeah, no purchase order has been made, so.
No, it's in there.
Yeah,
Is there, are we waiting for something, do you know, or you just haven't gotten around to it?
just haven't gotten around to it, yeah.
All right, under boards and commissions, we go all the way, almost to the end, it says board of, and then it's not filled in.
I don't know, I'll have to look.
It was the same, I looked at last month's report, and it said the same thing, and I it is.
Yeah, you should have told me.
You need a
You
wedding.
know, I corrected it.
You need a wet in that column.
Yeah, that column is only so wide, so that's the reason why it's like that. But I'll write in, just instead of board up, just have to be.
In the Department of Health, I'm assuming they raised their rates or something?
Yeah, yep.
Is that a contract?
They usually give us the number at the beginning of the year, so it's like June, July, they'll give it to us. And if they revise it, then it is what it is. I have no control over that, yeah, which is sad, but true.
Any other questions on page 6? Page 7. I'm assuming the community center and the pool and locker, nothing's been done on that, that's why I went.
Correct.
And the evidence of
I can tell you the town hall garage, you'll see a line item transfer tonight for that. And the items that's left in it is to insulate the attic and the stairway to go up. So those are the two items that I think we transferred 15,000, still have 5,000 for that.
All right, do we have any other questions on page 7? Not, I'll entertain a motion to accept this report as presented.
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Can't vote.
I'll second.
All right, so I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented. All those in, the report as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. So now we have line item request for line item transfers. So you can speak to that, please.
Yeah, this is line item transfers that have been proposed to the Board of Selectmen and accepted by the Board of Selectmen, now coming to the Board of Finance. So the first line item is the town hall garage, which is for 15,000. Right now, it's a negative 9,000. So the balance of 5,000 will cover the installation and the stairway up. So that's the first one. And then the next line item, Department of Labor, Department of Health. And that is an increase of 6,600. And that is per contract what we got. That'll cover the cost of the Department of Health invoice.
Which is what we just talked about.
Yeah, yep. And then the next one, legal notices, as Dean noted tonight, it looks like it's going to be running short, and it will. So we're looking to transfer 5,000 into there. Hopefully that'll take us to the end of the year. And then the last one, as noted, the supplies. To increase the police supply line item, about 34,000, to cover the cost of the officer that we received from the city of Orange, right? Yes. And then we're going to decrease our town health insurance, 26,600. That right now is very healthy, so I can absorb it there. And then reduce police salaries to offset that expenditure for the officer. And those are the line items.
Is there a negative effect with downsizing the police salaries that much? Are we able to cover it?
As of right now, the in-house overtime has been pretty solid due to the fact that manpower has improved on the patrol shift. Our special investigations unit is still running short. However, it's because we keep more officers on the road and making up more salaries, less in-house overtime. At this point, no negative impact in my eyes. That was the chief's also.
The officer that was added, if I may ask, how many years' experience did he have?
Yeah, approximately two. I would like to say 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay.
So the academy, it's regular field training. He actually did apply with us at the beginning. He did not complete one of the portions of the test. Then he passed Norwich the next day within 20 hours. So then he went right, hired, picked up, went to Norwich, and then he always wanted to be here as a local guy.
So he lives in town?
Yes, yes, he's a resident.
What's the timeframe when they, when we have to pay the other police department?
So,
If there are.
yeah.
It's right away.
it's-
It's right away. It's in the union contract.
Yeah, so it's a union contract and it's state law now, as far as when officers leave. When I transferred from the city of Groton, there was nothing in place. A lot of times, the officer would get certified with a department that was hurting on officers, and they were hiring en masse, and then that officer would leave, go to where they wanted. For instance, I got off field training, Plainfield wasn't hiring at the time that I was looking to be hired, and I transferred it, there was no fee attached to me. Well, that happened way too much throughout the state, whereas they ended up putting into a state law where there's a string attached to you for, I believe, 2 years, that you're going to be responsible if they transfer within those years after certification for a percentage of their salaries, training, uniforms, equipment, so on and so
So
forth.
somebody like, say, with 3 years and you're already,
You know, so if someone has over, unless it's contractual, if someone has 3 years into it already, they are safe to transfer wherever they want throughout the state.
Does that affect just the state of Connecticut, or can that be other, like Rhode Island?
So as far as Rhode Island, Massachusetts, those are called comparative laterals. So they can come with no string attached. If there is a contractual string attached, that's something they would have to deal with in their state, whether it be on their own accord, but within the state of Connecticut through law enforcement. If they're within those 2-year time frame, we are responsible for reimbursing that department. As far as how they calculate what they put into the training, so on and so forth, that's something chiefs discuss.
Yeah, on the union contract.
Yeah, and then the union contract separate, so for this officer, there was a 3-year term where there was an actual lump sum for a union contract stipulation.
So this money's already been paid in dollars.
Yes.
Are there any other questions about the line item transfers? If not, I will entertain a motion that we approve the line item transfers as presented by Finance Director.
I'll make a motion that we accept it as presented.
Second.
All right. We have a motion to accept these as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? At this time, I believe we have our special guest of the evening. At the time, he's just almost perfect. You're 2 minutes early.
Well, it took me about 2 hours to get here, so.
Oh, wow.
We got like 90 times to get all right. Usually a quick ride, but that's that. Whatever it was, the problem, I had to go around it.
Yeah.
It didn't look good, so hopefully everyone's all right.
Yeah.
Nothing like walking in and just getting right to work, so.
All right. So at this time, I will welcome our guest. I'm afraid I don't remember, is it Kyle?
Yes, yep.
Okay. From Markham LLC, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay. So if you would like to walk us through the audit report at this time, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. We shouldn't move up here, so it's a little bit more audible. Do you want to sit on the mic here?
No, I think, can you hear over there, Mary?
I'm about 10 days removed from having COVID myself, so I just want to try to keep it a little
Okay,
space
that's fine.
from everyone.
Yeah.
And the microphone. Included.
Sure.
Okay, great. So apologies for being late, but it sounds like it worked out all right. A bit longer to try than typical. So we're going to present the fiscal year 22 financial statements to you tonight. We're going to be, we are issuing, if you were to read through the audit report, a clean opinion. And that's particularly impressive this year to have the financial statements done prior to the end of the calendar year and to have a clean opinion. As I'm sure the board is aware, the town came under a cybersecurity breach on a lot of the financial information. So we did everything we could to help Kelly recreate the financial reporting based on some of the information we had related to the prior year. But it was a very large undertaking on her behalf to prepare everything and have the audit go as smoothly as it did. And certainly not Kelly is not alone in helping us get here and have this done. Ron as well, and the Board of Education did a great job of providing all the reports that we needed. So it's almost as if the attack didn't happen, which is a great place to be, all things considered. We did provide a recommendation. We have a report, a communication governance letter that comes out at the end of the audit that's separate from the single audit, where we will provide recommendations that we don't think made it to the level of finding but are still important. So within that report, you'll see that we're going to recommend that the town and Board of Ed continue to perform vulnerability checks within their system. I know that a lot of changes have been made since the cybersecurity attack happened, but we are always going to recommend that you perform any sort of vulnerability. You can have it done through your insurance company, you can have it done through your IT third party, and just see if there's opportunities where someone can come in and disrupt the operations of the town. So I know that there were some completed, or there were some planned to be completed, but that's a recommendation that we have going forward. And Plainfield's not alone. We're recommending that across all, not even just municipalities, but a lot of the private companies that we're working with as well. But it seems like municipalities have really been targeted with these sorts of attacks, ransomware, hard to track down, money grabs. And so it seems like a lot of towns and schools have just been the target of these types of attacks. So we're recommending everyone that we're working with that these vulnerability tests take place, and that there's a formal training that's provided to all employees on an annual basis for what to watch out for, whether it's phishing scams or links that are opening these ransomware attacks. So those are two recommendations that we're making. And we did issue a clean set of financial statements, thanks in large part to Kelly and Ron. One thing you'll see that's a little bit different that is in this year's financial statements that you probably hadn't seen, or you wouldn't have seen last year, is the implementation of GASB Standard 87, which is leases. So the town does have some capital leases that you use to finance assets. Those leases were not impacted. These were focusing on operating leases, and for the town of Plainfield, it's cell towers that you're generating revenue off of. And so these were always kind of buried in the notes of the financial statements, but you'll see this year that we actually had a restatement for the standard implementation, and you'll see it on the general fund as a lease receivable. And there's a whole calculation that goes into it, but it's essentially the net present value of future revenue that you're going to see on those cell towers. Overall, the general fund had an increase in fund balance of about $550,000. A few factors that played into it. First was your property taxes, both current and prior year in total came in about $650,000 higher than what was budgeted. Your collection rate, I believe, this year was around 98%, which anything above 96% we would consider to be healthy. So that's positive. There was also building permits were significantly higher than budgeted as well, about $580,000 higher than what was anticipated. And I believe that's just due to the economic developments within the town during fiscal 22. On the expenditure side, public safety was over by a little less than $260,000, but there were savings in employee benefits within general government of $174,000, and education costs came in $230,000 lower than what was anticipated. Overall, the WPCA fund had an operating gain this year of about $283,000. Typically speaking, that fluctuates year over year. You want to have to make it close to even. So there was a gain this year. And also, one fund that I want to bring to your attention is the CARES Act funds. At year end, there was a little over $2 million that we have categorized as deferred revenue. It's the ARPA funds that the town received that hadn't been spent on eligible expenditures yet. And so to see it as it's in its own cash account, and it's unearned revenue, so it's not recognized yet. Talking with Kelly, I believe that there's a plan, or it's probably, I don't even know, has it been fully spent yet?
No, it hasn't been fully spent, but the plan is for WPCA sewer. So we're with an engineering firm right now trying to figure out the projects moving forward.
Okay, yeah, that's one of the costs that majority of towns that we're working with are using it on sewer and water infrastructure. So that appears to be what the town's going to use that as town does have its own pension liability and OPEB liability. Pension, I don't know if you can recall from last year, but it had actually flipped from being a liability to being an asset on the books, and that was mostly driven by fiscal 21. The interest rates were through the roof. And, you know, as long as you continue to make your contribution, you know, it may not stay that way. So in fiscal 22, we saw the exact opposite. The markets were significantly worse in 22 than they were in 21. And so you kind of saw that net pension asset flip. But I wanted to make sure you knew it wasn't because of a lack of funding it. The market really drives whether or not the investments work in your favor or not. So it went from being, I think, 110% funded to about 89% funded. So it's just a fluctuation year over year in your investment income. Same for your OPEB. That actually only decreased from 15% funded to 14% funded, so it only took over a 1% dip, which is quite a bit less than the pension liability. 2 years ago, that was funded at about 7%, so it doubled in the prior year, and it's stayed relatively close to the same. So that's the information I have on the financial statement audit. I can get into the single audit as well. So the single audit, what we do is we are looking at federal funding that the town and school receive, as well as in Connecticut, as a state single audit act, where we're looking at state funds as well. And so the largest fund this year, well, from a federal standpoint, was the ESSER funding that the Board of Education received. I think it was $2 million or so on the CFA. So we're required to test that funding for compliance to make sure it was spent appropriately, to make sure it was reported to the state appropriately. We tested quite a bit of costs that were both payroll and non-payroll related. And happy to say that the controls over compliance and compliance in general, we did not have any issues. So that was a clean single audit. On the state side, there were 3 different grants that we looked at: the adult education with the Board of Ed, and on the town side, the municipal grants and the town road aid. Those are 3 pretty common programs across the state. We tested all 3 of those for state compliance, and we didn't have any issues to report to you on those either, which is great news. The only information in the single audit report that I will discuss was the finding in the current year. We had received the information from both the town and the Board of Education as it relates to cash reconciliations and the financial reporting systems from each entity should tie into the trial balances. Again, on the town side, on the Board of Education side, we had some reconciling items that were not easily identifiable initially. So we had a variance between what the Board of Ed had provided from their financial reporting system and their cash reconciliations to what the town had on their books. You know, we were able to figure it out, so it's not to say that there was money missing. That wasn't the case. There was just some reconciling items that took us some time to identify in order to make sure that the Board of Education's financial reporting software reconciled to the town's cash statement, or the town's cash within their financial reporting system. So that was the only finding that we had to bring to your attention. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a question, mostly for the Board of Ed. You mentioned that they received about $2.3 million in ESSER funds.
Yeah.
And I know that year during the budget process, on the budget, you had $753,700 being used for ESSER. I'm just wondering where the other $1.5 million went to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Paul Brennan, superintendent.
Yeah.
So ESSER is a multi-year grant. There are some districts that chose to spend all $2 million in year 1. We took the grant that expires in 2024, and we spread out the services for students over those years for recovery. So what you're seeing is 1 year of multi-years that are eligible for the ESSER grant. Last eligible year will be next year. You'll see that we're going to apply some of the same pieces we applied this year. So you'll see an offset for fuel costs. You'll see that we still have interventionists in that grant. Those are things that we do to maintain services while keeping costs down.
All right, so basically, did you use the $2.3 million for ending in 2022?
Did we? No, there's still, it's
mean, from what I'm gathering, there's a set amount, 2 point some odd million, and you divide it into 3.
There's actually more than one ARP-ESSER. So there was actually 4 ARP-ESSER.
Okay.
So they all have different timelines, and we divided them out over the length of the grant so that we could get the maximum use of the money. So no, we did not spend all of it in 1 year.
No, did they use that money, or how, did
So-
they receive that money that year?
I don't know what the full award was, I don't have that information in front of me at the moment, so I apologize. But we did report $2.3 million worth of
ESSER funds.
eligible expenditures of ESSER funds in fiscal '22.
Okay.
And I can answer part of that. I'm not allowed to request the funds from the state of Connecticut unless I can show them what the amounts of expenditures are.
Right.
So they run very close. When I submit my numbers, first thing I have to do is load in my expenditures to date,
Right.
and then project the next month, and that's the money that I ask for the state. So it's always running very close to the amount that I expended.
Right, because in the current year, when we approved the budget, you have 1.1 million being used out of ESSER for the current year.
Okay.
Then for the upcoming budget year, there's another 1 point whatever million coming up too.
Sure.
I know it's spread out,
Yep.
you know, but I'm looking at that, and what was approved was only 753,000, so I'm a little confused with that, that's all.
I would have to actually look at what grants you're talking about, because as Mr. Brennan said,
Mm-hmm.
there's the CARES Act, there's the ESSER 2, there's ARP-ESSER, and these are multi-million-dollar grants. So
Yeah.
I'd have to look at exactly.
Yeah. So I'm a little confused as far as the total number and what was initially in the budget, that's
Yeah,
all. I'm not-
I can't speak to exactly what it is. I'm sure
Yeah.
Ron and I could get together and get you an answer on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I know that there is an ESSER 3 that came out that is specific to fiscal '23. It's all based off of Title I funding, so I think there's a lot of different layers of ESSER money that the board is receiving. So, well, I'm happy to work with Ron and get the information that you're looking for. I'm sorry that I don't have it on me now.
Not a problem.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm just going to read something off to you and then just ask a little bit of feedback. It said that at the close of the current fiscal year, unassigned fund balance to the general fund was $9,752,254 for 20% of the fiscal year 2022 general fund budgetary expenditure appropriations. That 20%, how does that compare to other towns? Is 20% a healthy number, or should our fund balance be looking at something higher?
I would say on average, a healthy number would be between 12 and 16%.
Okay.
So,
And that's actually unassigned, right?
correct.
What is the impact of that type of number when it comes to bond ratings?
You know, I can't speak to exactly what bond rating agencies are looking for. I know that there historically hasn't been a focus on your government-wide financial statements, so when you start factoring in long-term liabilities like your pension liability, your OPEB liability, I think there's less of a focus, especially since your plans are funded to some degree. And I think the majority of what they're looking for is making sure that you're capable of covering your budgeted costs on a year-to-year basis to make sure you can afford principal and interest payments. So I would say there's probably more of a focus on your unassigned fund balance for the general fund than there is on your government-wide position. No problem, no, I don't mind at all.
All right, I have a question on the, and I don't know if you can answer this, but it's on the Board of Education plan. There's a notation here that says those who choose to participate must pay 100% of the premium cost. I wonder if you could speak to that. Does that mean that the people that are involved are paying for their pension program? Or is this fully funded from an outside source? I mean, is it deducted from their salary, or how does that work?
Is this in regards to the state pension plan?
Post-employment benefits, okay.
Oh, the OPEB plan. Ron, can you speak?
Yeah, I believe the retired folks pay 100%.
I couldn't hear.
I think the retired folks in that plan pay the 100%. I'd have to look.
Okay.
Becky Miller is the one that handles TRB contributions.
All right, I guess it's worded a little differently. I didn't know if it meant people that are actively employed or not.
No, it would not be active.
Okay, all right.
Part of teachers' retirement board, pardon me, one of the clauses is that when they retire, they have the ability on their own to have access to the state plan and buy it themselves.
Okay,
But we're not paying for it for teachers. There's no,
all right.
that's not a burden we're carrying.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody else have any questions? Tom?
Oh, yeah.
Not yet? Tom?
Not this time.
If there are no other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion that we accept this report as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion to accept this report as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Thank you for coming out.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank
Nice to see
you. 2 hours for 20 minutes.
It's worth it. Perfect, thank you. Sounds great. Thanks, everybody.
Do you have a, excuse me, before you leave, do you have a card or anything that I could have?
I really should.
Contact you through Kelly?
I'll send it
Okay.
out.
All right, this time I will open the floor to any citizen participation. If anybody has anything that they would like to ask or contribute, please choose.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I would just like to know if there's anything the Board of Ed or even the police department would just like us to know. Just, I mean, I know we're coming into new budget season. I just figured I'd ask how are things going? I mean, anything we should know. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it could be no. I'm just wondering.
I think for us, the most pressing issue, I've done a report on at every board meeting, is staffing. There's a shortage of certified teachers, particularly in special education. So our largest challenge right now, going into the holiday break, is hiring school psychologists, speech and language pathologists. We're fortunate that our science and math departments are full, However, if we had an opening in one of those areas, that would be a challenge. So I'd say that's our largest challenge. Students returning from COVID are doing well. Sports teams are doing well. Girls just beat Griswold, I think I got a notification on my phone. So, we're headed into holiday break strong, and I'm just hoping that kids all come back healthy. I'd like to say, since I'm being broadcast, we do have COVID tests available for families if you'd like to pick them up at any of our locations. We're happy to share them.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
How are we doing on enrollment this year?
So our enrollment, when we present the budget, we're going to present our enrollment report. Enrollment is down slightly. That's heavily influenced by our pre-K enrollment. At the start of the year, we did not have enough pre-K teachers to have 4 pre-kindergarten classrooms. We only opened with 2. We've now opened a third because we hired that teacher. Last year, we had over 110 students in pre-K. This year, we have under 80. A large portion for that is at the start of the year when we don't have those classrooms available. Families find other childcare, other daycare available, and then when we tell them we've opened that, they don't want to move their child. So if you look at the enrollment numbers, and we'll present the full enrollment report, our budget's being publicly presented to our board on January 25th. We have a full enrollment report, actually projects out 10 years. We do anticipate, just based on regional numbers, that in the next 10 years, overall enrollment will drop about 30 students, and that's in line with where the region is.
Do you see them coming back at all after pre-K? Like if they go somewhere else for pre-K, do you see them coming back?
I do see them coming
Like
back.
for kindergarten?
For kindergarten and those other programs. So it's a lot of it's childcare.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything on your end, or?
As far as PD, we're doing great. We have 17 officers right now on staff. Obviously, we're allocated for that 20. We're in the process of hiring 2 to send to the Eastern Regional Police Academy, which will be the first ever. It's going to be hosted in Norwich, which we're going to be assisting sending instructors down and pushing forward with that. We did have 2 applicants in our process. One of them unfortunately went to Willamette PD, but we still have one viable option who just passed a medical evaluation today. So we're pushing to get her on board in the beginning of January. The last steps would be the police commission meeting and finishing up the background. There's no red flags currently for that. And then after she gets into the academy, we would start opening our process again to fill that other position.
The academy is what? Isn't it like, is it like a year and a half before they're like, no, it's a year and a half before they're like on their own, right?
Yes, yep, year and a half. This Eastern Regional Academy, because it's local and because it's this side of the Hartford River, they more or less understand the trials and tribulations of the departments out here. So they are going to be doing longer days to try to cut back on the academy time and get the officers here for training, which is the benefit for that. So we will be opening our process again. And then for that third spot, the vacancy left by Detective Caleb Shores, we will be recouping that, waiting for hiring until probably March, if not further along in that. Chief would know better the time frame for that third spot, but right now everyone's good, everyone's healthy, and we're happy to have potentially another officer on board in the next couple of months.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the update, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
All right, so I'll open the floor to citizens' participation. If there's anybody that has something that they would like to ask or contribute, they can please approach the mic.
I feel like I can single out. Matt Raynette, Lusa. My only question would be whether there has been any communication about anticipated line transfers to cover any increase in the energy costs effective January 1. I know that we've got a couple of moving parts there between power purchase agreements with the solar panels that we either do or do not have on our town buildings, what the upper limit of any permissible rate increases or when those might be revisited to check for rate adjustments, and then just what the outright electrical usage might be and what we anticipate the cost increase being for year end.
Do you have anything you want to add to that, or?
I would anticipate waiting until after the first month of January to see where we are with that, and then I could forecast maybe the following months after what it would look like.
So we haven't done anything, but we're looking, we can do it.
Yeah, I
After the
can
first
look at, I
month.
want to see what January comes
Yeah.
in at, and then
See how that changes.
forecast the following months.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, is there anyone else that would like to add to the meeting? If not, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? This meeting is adjourned.